Welcome back to another Power of 8 Book Club episode. And today we're looking at Chapter 15 in The Power of 8 by Lynne McTaggart. And the chapter is called Healing Wounds. Hello, my name is Pollyanna Blanco, and I'll be your co-host along with Jennifer Smith. And we're so happy that you're here again. And as always, we encourage you, if you would like to comment in the chat or ask a question, or even, join us by coming on, just let us know. We would love to hear from you. We've really appreciated the feedback we've received from you so far. And we're better, when we link arms and we share together. So we encourage you to do that and know that you're welcome to do that. This chapter is really interesting because in the previous chapter, it was talking about the Twin Towers of Peace. And today, with it being 9/11, OMG, talk about timing. We didn't plan it this way. We were just before we hopped on here, amused at how and delighted at how it just lined up like this. And so in this chapter, she talks about, in fact, her opening sentence in here is all about how during even the first day of the experiment that they did in relating to 9/11 and healing what happened that day for the collective, that it was a very powerful day, even more so than some of their other experiments, like the one in Sri Lanka. And the opening part of the chapter really, and throughout the chapter, it goes into all the respondents, the participants, their experiences, the impact, the positive impact that participating in this peace event, this Power of 8 peace event had. And what blew me away was the degree of the impact. What are your thoughts on that, Jennifer? I know we're going to share more on that, but I want to invite you to share what is bubbling up for you.
I really love this chapter, and today would be a great day of any time, right? 9/11 and the healing wounds, and covering off on how healing our intentions really are. But I have like the whole first section highlighted because there were so many quotes from the participants that were in the study that that I can so relate to, because these are the sort of experiences people have during energy healing sessions, or some of the experiences I've had through meditations and through healings. And it's always sometimes for me a little difficult to describe in words how it feels. So I have like all of these quotes highlighted. I think we should go through a few of those today, because it gives some words around this feeling that people may have. And I think it's really important, because if this is like a first time experience for people, they can get an idea of what it is, or if it's happened with people, and it's not something that they regularly do, they can know, yeah, they're on the right track. This is a good thing, right?
I love that. I think that's so important. I'm so glad you brought that up, because in the past before we have shared some of the tidbits, but this chapter really, what I love about it too is how she really shares so much of the respondents' experiences. So I'm going to jump in and share a couple that stood out for
Okay.
me, and then if you'd like to do the same, again, it's just so rich. I had underlined on the very first page that it was like swimming in an ocean of goodwill and love and hope. Also, their bodies felt electrified, and many were shaking, like when you're really cold and you get the chills, with waves and waves of shivers all over their bodies. So it was really palpable. It wasn't just an idea that something positive was happening. And on the next page, it's on page 156, it said many were openly sobbing during and after the experiment, as though they tapped into a global pain body, intensifying their own feelings. And as one person shared, I wasn't a body at that very long moment. And it's the closest I have ever felt to God. And so I thought that was just amazing. And there's so many more amazing ones. I'm sure we'll go through a lot of them today. What jumped out for you, Jennifer?
Here's some more descriptions that the participants had described their feeling. Like I was a piece of metal being drawn to a magnet, not of this world, from my elbows to the tip of my fingers. Yeah. And here's the second one, and then I have a question for you. It says, the second quote here is, like I had a white glow around my body with a white cylinder connecting my body and everyone else's to the target area. So the first one here about a magnet, like a metal being drawn to a magnet. I can remember one of my first meditation experiments because, I worked in the corporate world, and then I wanted to learn more about spirituality, I started learning more about the human potential, but then it got me into spirituality because we're spiritual beings. And I had never really meditated before. So I was trying it, and I had this exact experience where it felt like I was just even the chair I was sitting in, like I was being just drawn to it like a magnet, like this force pulling me. And I remember thinking, wow, that was an interesting experience, but I didn't really know what it was all about. And at the time, Jess was she was like kind of my spiritual counselor. If I had any questions, I would go to her and ask her. So I was telling her about my experience, and she's like, oh, well, was really powerful. So she said, just relax into it next time and accept the invitation. It's like, okay. So it was really nice to be able to talk to someone who understood it, because I didn't have anybody around me to really talk to about these sort of things. So it was really good to, to be able to do that. What about you? Do you remember any of your first experiences?
I do, and I can remember it was the very first. Well, it wasn't the first Reiki session, but I think it was the second or third one. And I was brand new to Reiki, experiencing Reiki on the table, and I was lying there, and I had this sense of peace come over me. It was like a sense of peace that I'd never felt on Earth before, and like such a calm and everything like that. And then I received a vision, which I'm a pretty visual person, so that part didn't surprise me as much, but it was the combination of everything together. And I saw this sort of violet amorphic being, and it said to me, love can move mountains. Like that was the message I received. And I remember at the time having like I was consciously aware that I was having this experience, and I remember my mind of form trying to like understand it in the moment and make sense of it, saying, this is what it must feel like to be back in the womb again. Like, it was just like, and it made me realize that even when I had felt peaceful up until then, it was nothing like this. It was like complete and utter trust. And then I had the other thought, the energy on earth is so dense. It's so dense compared to what I'm feeling and experiencing right now. The really curious thing about it in hindsight is that I can describe what I experienced in the moment. And I have had other moments since then in meditation and offering healing work. But that particular like flavor, I guess you could call it, that particular nuanced experience, full body palpable experience, I can remember it, but I can't really re-experience it as I'm talking about it. So that's how I knew it wasn't just my imagination in hindsight. At the time, like the same as you, like I didn't know who I could talk to about it. And it was very interesting because the Reiki master who was offering me the session just smiled and didn't respond. So that in the moment really left me to just be with it, right? And to just, as I like what you shared about accepting it, right? As opposed, sometimes our logical mind tries to understand it and it defies what the mind can understand. So it is really, really nice when we can share these experiences with each other. I love that,
Yeah. And I love that the book is also explaining the experiences from other people. It gives when people read this chapter 15, it'll give them an idea of, of what can happen on how some of these healing experiences actually feel. Yeah.
Definitely. It's, and I'm so glad that you brought up the point about people experiencing this on the healing table, because that's oftentimes, when we have it, often a lot of people, when there's an emotional or a physical issue and we've tried other things, and then we say, I'll try anything. And then we find ourselves on an energetic healing table. It's not always the path, but for many it can be, right? And then starting to get a sense that we're so much more than just this physical being, and even so much more than just our thoughts, and that it's an experiential phenomenon. And that's what I love about this chapter, is she's sharing so many different experiences. There's another one I underlined here too on page 156. They'd hallucinated strange, highly specific utopian visions from their own perspective, feeling as though they were in their bodies, but also right over there in the target area. So that, along with, I wasn't a body at that very long moment, and that coupled together, it was sort of like that feeling of how much we identify with the physical body. And yet, and in these moments, these mystical moments of union and collective consciousness and intention and prayer and healing, how we dissolve into a greater sense of connection and belonging and unity beyond just those aspects of us that keep us feeling somehow divided or separate,
Yeah, why don't we go into that quote a little bit more and talk about that? So they were in their bodies, but also right over there in the target area. So how would you describe that to people? Would you call that a bilocation?
Thank you. That's a really good question. I'm so glad that we're chatting about this, because this is the juicy stuff, because people are wondering, what are they talking about, right? This sounds like Star Trek. Okay, I guess there's like lots of, I'm trying to think of the way I would explain it. Bilocation would be one. And also, as I understand it too, like, okay, this might getting a bit esoteric. We have many different timelines we can be on, and we have many different versions of ourselves happening simultaneously across all these timelines. And it's not as profound. I used to think, if I'm on this timeline or that timeline, it's like I got to heave myself onto that timeline. It's way over there, and it's got to be like when people
Hold
talk
on to
about
this
leaps
timeline. It's feeling good.
yeah, and when people talk about leaps of faith, I better get my cape on and like hope I can fly all the way over there. Like I need a flight ticket or something, right? What I've come to realize is it's as subtle as every thought we choose to focus on or not shifts what timeline we're on. It's like this very subtle choose your own adventure novel where we're kind of like leaning a little bit more this way or leaning a little bit more that way. And we find ourselves in this version, in this experience, and then we slide over here and we're back in this version or that experience, and it just keeps unfolding, right? So that's one. I'm getting maybe a little on a tangent here, and I apologize, but
So
it's
just
like,
to recap what you said, like every thought we have,
yeah,
we're constantly shifting all day long,
yeah,
a lot
yes,
with every thought we have. And so every decision that people make or every thought that they have can shift you to another timeline. But you can also shift very quickly with intention.
yes, yes. Great. I'm glad you nailed it on the head when you said that. Definitely, intention is the driving force that catapults the shift and rapid fire, succession, right? Like boom, you're right on to the next timeline, right? With that intention, the power of our choice and our presence. And I also see it too. I see it on that level, of that personal level of like choosing this way or that way with where we focus our energy. in that sense. And then I also see it in the sort of very non-personal sense too, right? Do you know what I'm getting at? Like, do you see it both ways? Because there is the, when you're in the body, you're identified with your individual expression, your height, what you're wearing, how you're feeling in your body. And then when you meditate, or you're setting an intention in these kinds of groups, it's a peak experience that people are feeling, where they're, I guess the best way I can describe it is that sense of unity through consciousness itself, where all the things that we identify with as being personal, even someone said that later on in the chapter, things even in their outer life after this experience were no longer so personal, and we'll get into that a little later on, I'm sure. So it's like, on the one hand, we have all these individual personal choices we're making that help us to shift where we are at any given moment. And sort of paradoxically, at the same time, um, I guess the bridge here, just to back up for a second, is that's the frequency shift that we've been talking about all along, right?
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
when we gather in these groups and we choose collectively to be on that frequency together of sending peace and love and harmony and focus to the highest outcome for the restoration of wholeness, to this, we become that which we are. So if healing is about a restoration of wholeness, and we're focused on that, then that's what we become in the process. And that's why if we become wholeness, then we're no longer identifying in the presence of that moment with anything other than the truth of the wholeness. So we can't really simultaneously be thinking about this individual body. It just naturally unfolds that um, that focus becomes the experience, which is the truth of the moment. That's how, like, long-winded
Yeah.
answer. What do you
And
think?
I think with the group intentions and what people are saying here, what their experience was, I find even in the right mastermind groups, focusing on a certain intention, is that you're clearing your mind. And even if you sit and meditate and you just clear your mind, like I can feel my frequency rise with that, right? But with this and in a group setting, everybody's frequency rises. So it even gets more amplified. That's why the power of 8 is going to be so good, because you don't have to be a healer and go through the training of being a healer, but you can participate in the power of 8 with an open heart and your good intentions, and be able to experience some of these same healing effects.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought up that point, because that's so important for people to hear. Because sometimes when we talk about spiritual experiences and healing, and even anything that sort of sounds maybe a bit esoteric, to people, it can sound like it's sort of shrouded in a mystery that is inaccessible. And the truth of the matter is that when we come together, even with what we're doing right now, when we come together, I always feel so great after I get off these
Mm-hmm.
calls with you, and it also feels great to connect with, even reading the comments that people leave. I always feel enlivened and I feel connected, and this is the beauty of just the connection we have to each other as a humanity, like the best of humanity. This is what we're meant to become through and with each other, right? Is the highest expression of the highest, intentions and the highest good, in any given moment. And it's also, that whole concept of like a soul mirror, right? Like when you surround yourself in these Power of 8 groups, with being with people who are on the same vibrational frequency and page and are choosing to be, then it's like the sum is always larger than its parts, right? You sound a little
Mhm.
mathematical here for a second, but it's that, yeah. And so when you talked about the amplification, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
other parts in the chapter stood out for you? I know there are a lot more I could share, but I'm curious what grabs your attention.
Yeah, I loved all of this in the chapter. Let's see what else I have highlighted here. It's just said, with the intentions. One, I think that the major point is with the peace intention experiment to move this day more towards peace and love instead of replaying the old, right? That's the major intention here, and that's the intention we should have for our lives too. Instead of playing an old story, let's try to make some good from this, or at least make it a peaceful day. So one of these I have here highlighted is on page 157. It said her friends were commenting about how overloaded they felt with negative 9/11 emotions. And the participant was able to tell them that there's a large group of people working to use this anniversary to improve peace. And that made people feel better. So I thought that was good.
I love that. And it just flashed through my mind. Wouldn't it be amazing if this is how we looked at history?
Hmm.
You know, wouldn't this be a fascinating way to approach historical events, especially, ones, because a lot of them, not all, but some, you think about all the wars and stuff like that, from the point of view of how can this be an opportunity, an opening for more peace, to, okay, this is what happened. And there's something even in healing work that I've used before called revision. And I know there's a revisionist approach even to history, right? But wouldn't it be wonderful if it was even elevated to the point where we could really learn from history and not just learn intellectually from it, but heal from it, heal from history,
Mhm.
that it would be an opportunity, an opening to hold these collective intentions for more peace or more tolerance or more acceptance or more love or more harmony. Wouldn't that be like just next level in terms of, you know,
Yeah, and I think,
well,
and some people, and this is a great example of how that can be done, and some people do that. Probably not the masses at this point, but the more, people are talking about this sort of thing, I see that shift can happen fairly easy because it's not hard to do, right?
yeah.
But that's what you just described was a great segue into, the next few things here in the chapter, and it was talking about, different people from different religious beliefs whenever they got together and did this peace intention experiment. There's quotes from that, like, was talking about, your God is my God is your God. We all come from the same source, right? So there was differences like that. 3/4 of the participants spoke, um, of how this newfound sense of peace improve relationships in every regard, in every facets of their life, from family relationships, neighbors, sisters, um, twin brothers, with clients, ex-husbands, siblings. So there's all sorts of greatness that comes from these peace intention experiments.
Yeah, that's so true, because it wasn't just only during the experiment that people received the healing, the same healing that they were sending. They were sending the intention for peace and for restoration of harmony and goodwill. And they also then experienced the profound sense of connection through that. And then afterwards went off into their day-to-day lives and
Mhm.
had a different take on how to show up, not only for themselves but for everyone around them. Because I underlined a few things too along that line, along those lines, where um, that really stood out. Um, that they were talking about my husband came to me midweek and said that I was more approachable and open. The little stuff did not bother me.
Mhm.
Many had completely transformed in the way they related to other people. They felt they were able to see people and situations more clearly. They found anger more uncomfortable than before. In other words, it was sort of like, oh, I don't want this to be normal.
Mhm.
Were more apt to apologize and forgive, had stopped reminding themselves of what the other did to hurt them, and now were not taking things so personally. They felt a certain urgency to let go of the past hurts and were feeling feelings more, were listening more without judgment, and were more desirous of sharing their personal truth. Um, and an increase in compassion too. So just feeling more connected to strangers and more open to make contact with strangers. And there's another point too, actually, as I was reading that, I had it underlined too, because there's so much here too. This was fascinating. What did you think about this, Jennifer? The part where this whole idea of, when we talk about East and West, remember that
Mhm.
part in there?
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
interesting, where she said those from both East and West had experienced a powerful opening of the heart, and once again, a majority were falling in love with everyone they came in contact with. And they experienced a more peaceful feeling toward everyone, an open heartedness that continued between the intention experiments. They'd become more open and more comfortable and at ease around people and less concerned about what they think. And so they almost got to the point where they wondered about whether they should just call it the world as opposed to referring to it as the East and West.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
thought that was really
Because
interesting.
that is kind of puts in your mind a division, right? East and West.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Now we talked of we just described a lot of different things the participants said. So how would we explain that? What actually happens during these, and how can we describe it in a way? And I'll give it a shot here. And
Okay,
then
good.
I'll give it a try, and then you can
Go for
see
it.
what you think. But during these peace intention experiments, I believe what's happening is that people are pouring their love and intention on healing. And in turn, whatever energy that you put out is the energy that you also receive. So that's why the healing effect is happening on them.
Mhm.
And with this healing effect, healing is really um, a sort of like a new way of being, or you're raising to a higher frequency. Maybe that's another way we could look at it. um, but I think with that feeling that they had, and that higher vibrational, that moving on to that higher frequency and letting go of some of these things that needed healed, that needed to unwind and needed just to fall out, um, that that feeling's so good that when you go back out into the real world, and that's why it continued to have effects, and you're dealing with other people, you want to maintain that feeling, and you don't want to go back into any of these other emotional states that would kind of wind you back up, um, on your heal, to move backwards, to digress on healing, but to continue to move forward.
Yeah, for sure, because we learn through contrast, especially
Mhm.
when we're on that inner emergence journey, and especially when we've had a peak experience of connection like that. It's like, what? That then it also not only amplifies the positive experience, it amplifies the contrast, which is a good teaching tool to help us to really get clearer about what we're choosing. I also think too that the gathering with other people, there's something about that that gives us permission, that it because the mind has this way of trying to keep us safe, and will sometimes, because there's the programs and all that stuff happening underneath the hood of the car, that we might have a peak experience, and then depending on other prior experiences, whether we've healed them yet or not, there might be some space to wonder, is this sustainable, and all that kind of stuff. And when you have been in such a powerful experience with, I think it can happen with just one person, it can even happen on your own, but like
Mhm.
we've been sharing, when you're in a large group of people, and and you begin to see, like you said, it's simple and it's very achievable and very doable, that it sort of helps to kind of flip the switch in the mind, that it might be trying to kind of allow old programming in around, what is truly possible.
Mhm.
And I love that you said that too, because ever since I've been a little kid, I've always known this was possible. I remember sitting actually in my grade 11, or was it grade 12 high school law class. And I remember my teacher at the time, I would always ask him questions about, because he'd be talking about this and say, and I'd always question, well, why isn't this possible? And why can't that happen? And he would say, Polly, you need to join the UN. He'd say, it's the way it is. It's just the way it is. And I'd say, but that doesn't make any sense. Why does it have to be that way? It doesn't have to be that
Mhm.
way.
Right.
So
Yeah. So you already had a very open mind in high school, it sounds like. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. What else in the chapter stuck out to you?
I'm just taking a peek here. There was also a part, well, you mentioned it earlier about the multicultural prayer. I really like that,
Mhm.
in the sense that, and that the idea that and I remember even in the classroom, we used to have a poster. It was like a golden rule poster, and it had all the different faiths and how at the core of every religion is the golden rule: do unto others as you would, have them do unto you. And
Mhm.
so looking for the unity in all the different expressions of even spirituality through religion, to find that core essence teaching. And because that core essence is truly beyond any dogma, it's the heart and soul that is, the impetus for that, expression at its core, right? And
Mhm.
so and I liked how she distinguished it's like a bridging cultural practice rather than a superficial team building exercise. She made a kind of an interesting point about that. And then she went on to talk about, on May 3rd, 2015, New Ground, an interfaith organization that focuses on strengthening the bonds between Muslims and Jews, organized an event they called Two Faiths, One Prayer. I thought that was a beautiful name. To
Mhm.
gather Muslims and Jews in common prayer. They started with some 20 people of the two faiths praying together on a Los Angeles beach, gathering up more and more of the faithful from both religions throughout the day as they traveled together on public transportation and moved to 5 other locations. The group became 100 strong by the time they'd reached a rooftop in downtown LA for their evening dinner, with Muslims reciting their nighttime Isha and Jews reciting liturgical poetry or Piyutim at Los Angeles City Hall. And one participant said, we're praying to the same God. Why aren't we doing this all the time together?
Mhm. Yeah.
And because there's so much in here. There's one other thing I just kind of really want to mention. It was in here too about the I think they were sending each other text messages. Do you remember that part where they were?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to speak to that, because I just feel like that's so important for people to hear too, because there is still so much going on in the world, and just to show how this experiment was. We've been talking about the power of 8 circles, but I thought that point about the messaging was kind of interesting, that the quality of the communication they were having with each other and encouraged to have with each other at this gathering.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and it was the text messaging back and forth, but whenever I read that, I just thought, really, to me, that was just that it was connecting people from across the globe in realizing that we're all the same.
Yeah.
We're people all wanting to, we have the same goals in life. We want to be happy, we want to be healthy, we want to, have a good life here. And I think that's really just the core of of what they were realizing. There was there was nothing person to person, that there was any. any
Yeah.
issues, right? We're just the same. And I've had similar experiences just in the corporate world where internationally getting together with, there were 14 of us, different countries, and being
Yeah.
able to spend 3 weeks with them, 1 week at a time. We all went to Japan and we were learning more corporate training stuff. But that was really a great experience for me, just to realize, wow, we all are really just the same. I mean, people had different religions. We came from different countries. We had different backgrounds as far as our family, some being poor, some having a lot of money. But at the end of the day, we went through the training. We would go out and have dinner and talk and socialize and have fun. And people are people,
Yeah. I agree with that. And I feel like that's where gathering people together and looking for the commonalities, even if there's different life experience into different cultures. I mean, even growing up, I mean, I came from a mixed culture marriage too, right? Like my father was from northern Greece, which was even politically, Greek Macedonian. That had its complexities. And at the same time, and my mother was born here, but her father was from East Prussia, which no longer exists. It's part of Russia, but it was German speaking and culture. And then, but they weren't German at all. They were from Wales. And then I've had cousins married to people from Venezuela and Guyana and St. Vincent and, oh gosh, and China. And it's like we're like a little UN, and even the public school that I went to, my mom specifically wanted us to go to the public school in our neighborhood. There were a few because it was multicultural.
Mhm.
And I can remember even in Toronto, we have this exhibition every year, the Canadian National Exhibition, and we call it the CNE for short, and they had the international building where they had all these different cultural performances and food tables and you name it. And I remember there was a little book nook that my brother and I used to be allowed to go buy a few books in every, summer when we go there. And there's this one series where they had, different children around the world and their experience of day-to-day life. And I always just look so forward to reading those books because it was so fascinating to me just to see, oh, how does this little boy in Greece live? Or how does this little boy or little girl in Turkey live? Or what about over here in Africa? Or what about over here in Morocco? Or,
Mhm.
or in Afghanistan, or, in England, it was just like interesting to see
Yeah.
how people lived around the world.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So I think I'm going to read this because I have the whole paragraph highlighted. And this is Lynne talking about the experiments, the peace experiments. Last week, we touched on a lot of data where it was showing that there was a massive decrease in violence after these peace intention experiments. But she says in this chapter, I had no idea if my experiment could take the credit for the improved peace in these two southern provinces of Afghanistan. But if the feedback from participants were anything to go by, the act of sending intention had created peace in their hearts that seemed to be transforming their lives and the views of the East and West. For many on either side, the experience had been extraordinarily healing, a simple means of breaching ideological divides. And I thought that's exactly what this chapter described, how it actually transformed lives.
yeah, very much so. It's a
Mhm.
bridging chapter. It's the power of the bridge. And it's interesting too, the power of 8 groups, like you just shared, that bridge is the power of the intention, right?
Mhm.
To link arms and come together with a shared intention. And it's unifying. It's
Mhm.
unifying to come together and hold a shared intention, and even just the practice of that as a lived experience. is sort of I feel like it's almost like I'm hearing the word antidote to so many things out there right now in the modern world that have become polarized or are seeking to get us to choose this or that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So to have a practice where, yes, I'm saying yes to this, holding this intention with everyone else here and amplifying it and joining forces, what a beautiful counterbalance to some of the other things that are expressing out there. And again, couple that with the frequency shift that requires and it invites in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a powerful practice.
It is. It is. And I mean, this is what people call miracles. And this is how miracles happen. This is how healing miracles happen. This is how um, miracles that are throughout this chapter, how it happens. My mentor, Bob, had always said there's no such thing as miracles,
Mm-hmm.
because that's just who we are. That's what we can do as people. And we just need to put it into practice and do it and realize that's the power of who we are.
Yeah, that's I love that. I love
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
because yeah, it's wow. I just, when you said that, something flashed across my mind and I got excited, Jennifer. I was like,
Okay, tell
I,
us.
I, I see it. I see it. And I see it more and more these days. I've seen it since I feel things. I want to ask you because we're going to get to the and more part soon too, right? Because you know what
Yeah,
we've been
yeah.
noticing this week around us. It's just there's so much in here, and we've been sharing. I'm so glad we're sharing it all. That that what flashed across my mind is that as you shared that about Bob Proctor talking about miracles, there's no miracles. That's just living. Like that's normal.
Mhm.
The new normal. Like I just saw it. I
Normal.
just saw that I felt it in my body that this is what we're anchoring. And
Yeah.
to just the contrast, I felt like a glimmering of the contrast of, oh my gosh, like really we were living like that before, like, and I one thing for the and more part, I don't know if we're ready to go to that yet. Or is there anything else you want to share from the book before?
No, I'm good. I'm good for the in more part. I
I
like
just
that
wanted to
part.
check because there's so much in there, and I feel like a couple of things. Like I think I shared this last time too, but I'm happy to report it's continuing, that there's been a lot of joy, and I've seen real shifts in what's showing up around me. Like even today, my colleagues, um, I can see they're making different choices uh, in terms of finding balance in their own lives, in terms of, I mean, we're all conscientious. We care about work, but I know I have one colleague friend who was staying very late every night and with then just going home, falling asleep, and wash, rinse, repeat, and didn't have a lot of, and was really putting a lot of pressure and stress on their lives. And we were quite concerned actually
Mhm.
because we thought this
I've
isn't
been there.
sustainable. Yeah. And now it's like, oh, you're leaving today. Oh,
Mhm.
you're going to this appointment to take care of yourself today. It's like, and it's just like it feels miraculous because it's not a big to do. It's just like, oh, all of a sudden the timeline has shifted and this is the new normal, right? Like, and it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, when did this happen? Like in a good way. Oh, okay, great,
I think
awesome.
it's gonna continue to be
Yeah,
that way. I think it's gonna continue to get better and better. I think whenever, people can get to the point where they just know things are gonna happen, like we manifest and then we see it coming and we get excited sometimes.
yeah,
I think it's the part whenever we're not, like, so excited about, "Oh, that did happen." That it's just a known. Of course, that's what we do, you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
just gonna be a normal way of living, like, all the time.
exactly. Yeah. It's funny how, like, when I noticed it though, I noticed it, and it, like you're saying, it felt so normal. And at the same time, I thought, like, how did we get from here to there so quickly? Because for so long, it felt like, oh, be careful, seeing the same choices made over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden, this is the new normal,
Yeah. And
it's sort of,
you think did everybody just shift, or did everyone realize and then individually lift up? It's I don't know. But
you
I
know,
see the same thing.
I'm gonna put a card on the table here.
Okay.
And I'm gonna wager that that I don't know if this is the right language, but that's what's coming out of my mouth. That I wonder if, because we've been talking about the collective energy of these Power of Eight groups
Mhm.
and the ripple effect, and how, we can be um, beacons of light. And I'm not putting myself in that position, but all of us, it's like a kaleidoscope. As we shift one thing, it shifts the mirror. It shifts what is out picturing, not only for us, but for everyone around us. And this is how we are better when we each choose the highest. We're also choosing the highest for each other.
Mhm.
And so there's that positive ripple effect, that amplification in that sort of informal, impromptu, indirect way, because at the end of the day, spiritually speaking, everything's interconnected. On that sort of day-to-day nitty-gritty, we're in this jumpsuit living our 9 to 5 lives. That's where it gets fascinating to pay attention to these things and to notice them.
Mhm.
And that's why
Mhm.
I also think it's so important that this chapter highlights, and you mentioned it at the beginning too, about how we use not only these, landmark days with huge world events to focus on how we shift how we look at them to be openings for peace and harmony and enhanced love. Also the day-to-day moments in our lives, like to to look for the good, to look for
Yeah.
those moments, and take them in, really breathe them in. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're just retelling the same old stories, and we're missing the good that's actually available for us, that's in front of us. And so that's where I feel like that's going to become the new normal. I think that, and
Yeah.
I don't know what you think. What are you, if you
Yeah.
guys agree with
I
that?
am. Well, I think there was a big shift that happened in August.
Yeah.
And it was someone had posted this. I saw this on Facebook. She was talking about her jewelry breaking. Like she had crystal necklaces and stuff, and her jewelry was breaking over the last few weeks. She had a bowl, picture of a bowl, and her stuff in there. It's like, does anybody know what this means? She actually said my woo woo friend, so I thought, okay, well maybe that means me. So I I commented, it was like, to me, and what's happened to me in the past is when things like that happen, it's like you don't need this piece anymore.
Hmm.
But what was in my awareness was we've shifted, like, in August. The shift happened, and if these things were falling, it's like you're shifting, like, those energetic tools you were using, you no longer need. You can not have any, or you can up level to, some other energetic tools. But to me, that was showing the timeline shift, the up
Absolutely.
level for everybody.
Yeah. And actually, have you ever played this game before too? And just before I share that, actually, one of my colleagues today, his daughter mentioned, "Oh, Dad, didn't you know something big happened in August?" You know, so just to mirror it back, because you're in the US, I'm in Canada, and we're just sharing this randomly right now. We didn't know we were going to be talking about this. And I think it's important because I don't know if anyone else here, if there's any comments in the chat or anything like that we could peek
No
at,
chat.
because if this is something you've been hearing around, you're noticing in your own life, we'd love to hear if that's been your experience too. we'd be really happy to know that that might have been your experience, because I do have this sort of real strong intuitive hit and felt sense, like you do, Jennifer, that this is something that is here to stay, that this is a new wave or a tide or a timeline that
Mhm.
collectively we're stepping onto. And the more people that do, the more we hold sort of the balance of anchoring it into being the new normal, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
The game I was going to talk to you about is have you ever put something down in a place and you've been like, I'm sure I put it there. And then it's completely not there. And
Mhm.
then you're looking high and low and everywhere for it. And then all of a sudden you come back to that spot and it's there again. That doesn't happen to me all the time, but once in a while it happens to me. Have
Yeah.
you ever had that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I've seen this happen to my husband too, and he's like, "Did you move that there?" I'm like, "I did not move it there." But I love it whenever I see it happening to other people too. So I don't even worry about it. If, like, if I'm looking for something and I don't see it, I just go about and do something else because I know that if I just take my attention off of it because I think it's lost, you take your
Mhm.
attention off of that because you can't find it if it's lost, right? So you're like, "Oh, well, it'll show up," and you move about and do something else, and you come back, and then there it is.
There it is,
Yeah,
right? I've
that's how it
I've
happens.
I've often wondered if those are like timelines folding in on themselves, right? Because we put it down and then it's not there, and then it triggers potentially a stream of thoughts. That's why your advice to just let it go, move on, it'll come back if it's
Yeah,
meant to come back, is
yeah.
really good advice, a really
Mhm,
good suggestion. Because you could see where that spiral could go, change direction, right? If we
mhm,
get really fixated on looking for it and willing it to, and the self-talk that can come in and all that stuff.
mhm.
So just it's the it so that's the subtlety. I don't know, maybe I'm not sure if this is the case or not, but I feel like that's where the timelines sometimes fold in on each other. And we have that choice point, like you just shared,
Yeah,
in how we
I
choose to
think
handle it.
so. I think so, and, you were talking about looking for the good, and the more we concentrate on that, that's whenever we start elevating our thoughts more on the good. That starts to build energy, good, 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 and that too can raise our frequency. That can raise the level that we're on as well.
I have to share another really funny story. And this is like a very relatable story, I believe. And I feel like sometimes when I don't know if you've had this experience also, or if our listeners have, but when you're shifting into higher and higher frequencies and you're experiencing more joy and having more of these little aha moments and things sparking, sometimes the universe will send you enhanced moments where you can notice your choice. And the other day when I was driving to work, I'm very calm now driving compared to the way I was a year and a half ago, after the experience I had on the road with my car. And but anyways, I was driving to work and I was getting close to work, and all of a sudden I'm like, this car is really tailgating me. And in the past, I would have sent my nervous system into a cascade. It almost did, to be honest, but I was grateful it didn't, because I really feel like I've anchored a lot more peace in me. But it was like a tipping point. I could feel it. It was close, right?
Mhm.
And I remember looking in my rearview mirror going, who is this person? And I was like, well, they can't possibly be going my way, because no teacher would drive like this. The mind of form, right? Trying to reassure me that I'm safe, right? So I'm driving along. I turn right, they turn right. And oh my gosh. And then I turn left to go onto the street where my school is, and they're right behind me. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Why would a person driving like this want to go through a school zone where it's 40? Like, they're not going to get anywhere quickly. And then I was mortified. I was like, oh my gosh, they're pulling into the staff parking lot. And then I was like, and then they disappeared around the corner. And I was like, again, my mind, my beautiful mind was starting to spin stories. And I walked into the school and I got chatting with one of the caretakers, And then lo and behold, one of the teachers that I know well, that I have a great relationship, popped out and said, "I'm so sorry that I must have terrified you on the road, but I really wanted to get in time. I had to unlock the door for the student to come in." Just like, it was so funny because the universe gave me a beautiful, crystal clear opportunity to witness my beautiful mind wanting to spin out these absolutely redonkulous stories that had no basis in reality. They were totally perceptions from fear, but they were
Mhm.
so exaggerated. And the humorous part was, it's one of the nicest, kindest teachers I know in the building, who is responsible and actually is the auto teacher. So thankfully a very good driver too. So it was funny, and I could laugh at it. I could smile at it. And I thought, oh, all is truly well. And to just
Mhm.
notice these dimensions, these aspects of our experience of being human, and how they are. Now I'm the other thing I've been noticing lately is I've really been noticing my mind, and that perfectly illustrates how
Well,
the
that's a
universe.
great story that I think people can relate to how you describe that, because there's so many times that people just make up their own story that isn't even true, you know? So, but yeah, but that's how it can go, right? You think, why is this? Why is that? Whenever it ended up not being really anything, right?
And that's what I like about these Power of Eight groups too, because it takes us beyond the story.
Mhm.
It's like, we have a chance to unwind our stories
Yeah.
through the pure miracle presence of being together as human beings first.
Mhm.
You know, human
Yeah.
beings holding a single intention together, and from a pure place. So any residual stories that we may have picked up along the way from this experience, which may not have even been it was a distortion. It was probably even most likely a story we made up in our mind, because we didn't know, the mind didn't know any better and was trying to keep us safe. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's something I've been noticing lately. The universe has been giving me opportunities with quite a humorous twist to them, to really, in a heightened way, notice. Like I've shared before, we don't have to believe every single thought we think, fortunately.
Mhm.
And that, not only that, I've also been shifting this past week even more so when I see, oh my gosh, look at what this mind is doing.
Mhm.
Look at the stories it's spinning, and to have compassion for it, just to thank it. Boy, you're really, really good, aren't you? You're really good at trying to keep me safe. To you, everything is is a nine. What do you call it? A five alarm fire. A five alarm fire. Like,
Mhm.
everything's a five alarm fire to you. There's nothing where you're. It's almost like if my mind says, "Oh, isn't that wonderful?" Really? Do you really believe that? Like, because it's kind of like I see how quick it is to jump to a
Mhm.
story, and
Yeah.
how convincing it wants to be. And these groups help us to see, like I said, beyond the story, and recognize that it's actually very liberating to realize it
Yeah,
was just a
yeah,
story,
and I think you
Yeah.
could take that the group experience down to just an individual experience too, right? To really quiet the mind. The practice of meditation is important, because then throughout the day, you can have a calmer mind, and you
Yeah.
can go with the flow and ease of things a little bit better. I know yesterday I kinda took a break and was like, "You know what? Today I'm just going with the flow and ease." Like, I didn't have anything planned, and I just went with whatever was coming. It was a wonderful day. It was great. That's how we should be living.
Yes, I agree. I agree. It sort of runs counter to so many programs and things we've been taught. And actually, I was reflecting on something kind of similar to that today too. That we have a lot of, we're in a really interesting place in historically in time too, where I think
Mhm.
we have this phenomenal opportunity to, like, unwind so many construction, so many, and that's why collectively we're going through this huge paradigm shift, right? You know,
Mhm.
it's fascinating, right? The amount of ease, the amount of creativity, the amount of peace, the amount of love and
Mhm.
joy and harmony and balance. These aren't woo-woo things. You know, these are our birthright. These are actually what we came here for, and everything else has just been conspiring in a positive sense to help us to see that, you know, to want to reach for something more, because with the defaults we have in our, you know, thinking mind, you know, it's sort of there's kind of a setup in one sense to want to reach for something more than the other stuff. The only trick is to not believe that that's the truth, not to believe that the struggle and it can be very real. I don't want to, I mean, we've all had taste of it, and depending on, you know, people's life experiences to a far greater or lesser degree, it's a spectrum. And at the same time too, there are lots of stories of people who've gone through very precarious and difficult and extreme experiences in life and have come out the other side of it too. So um, just the potential, the human potential, you know, for all of us that's awaiting us is
Mhm.
really, I think, what I feel like this is what I love about this book. It just inspires me to consider it as being real.
Yeah, so I think I don't know what year was this book written? Because I want to go back to the
That's a
times, you
good point,
know,
actually.
let's see what the copyright date is. It was 2017. So, you know, I think that we can do the individual work on our own and uplift, and keep moving on to these higher frequencies. Not only that, but we are just in special energy times, just the energy on the planet, which is helping uplift everyone. And if they're on that wave, of that frequency wave, that consciousness wave, you know, and if they're able to recognize it, it's like miraculous times.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no doubt, even if you go back and look at our previous episodes and we were talking about some of the mystical experiences, there were some definitely some higher consciousness energy opportunities based on some of the experiences we had during those weeks.
For sure.
Mhm.
For sure. And, you know, we go through shifts and then we have periods of integration, and then we have, I believe we have plateaus too, where we have a chance to just bask in being in that new energy, you know, sort of it's sort of a little bit post integration. We still might be integrating somewhat. Recently, the up levels have been really rapid, and so
Mhm.
this is all the more reason to be um, in communion within ourselves and then with each other, because it helps to really stabilize um, and anchor us in what is emerging,
Mhm.
because there will be wobbles along the way because other parts of us are still integrating and healing and learning to come on board. It's just right now that stability in the eye of all the rapid change is really, really key for not leaning too far this way, that way, forwards,
Mhm.
backwards,
Mhm.
without being able to come back to center again. Like, we're always able to come back to center again, but it's
Yes.
just if we lean really far one way, you know, it takes a while to steady the self again. Um, and
I think
so that stability is really the anchor that keeps us coming back at least to the center, even when we wobble,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and if we understand this, it's much easier. It's much easier to maneuver. I think everybody's experiencing it, but they may not know what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
So they may not know, like, their emotions could be, because this is part of the healing process. Emotions come up, you clear them and heal them, right?
Yes.
Um, and they may not recognize what exactly is happening. Like, why do I feel this way? And that's why these podcasts are important. We're not the only ones talking about this and sharing our experiences, so other people can, to help other people too, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love doing these calls with you. And just out of curiosity, I can't see it on my end. Were there any comments or questions or?
I don't see any. I'm just in the chat box. I don't see any. Not this time.
Okay, that's all right. We have before. If you're watching this on replay, we encourage you to leave us a message below, or even reach out to either one of us too. We have a landing page now for the Power of Eight group that we're getting started, and we would love to have you join us and participate. Right now, we have a place where people can apply to be the recipient of the healing, and it's a 1 month commitment because it's for Power of Eight circles over a period of time, that month time, just so that we can exchange for feedback each week about what you're noticing. So all of that's on the landing page, and if you have questions, you can definitely reach out to us. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that, Jennifer?
I would just say that if people are interested in doing that, to go ahead and step up. You don't have to be experienced in this. Pollyanna and I will have guidelines and take you through the process.
Yes.
Just come with an open heart and good intentions. That's all you need to participate.
I'm so glad you shared that. Yes, our intention is first and foremost to hold a very safe and sacred space for everyone, and we'll guide you through it. We both are experienced energy healing practitioners. We've been doing it for a very long time, and we're here to guide you and divinely empower you.
Yeah. And and to learn the process. And then I just envision people maybe forming their own group of 8 with their friends and families to help uplift too. So there's so many possibilities.
Yeah, this is just our give back and what our hearts and souls are calling us to share, in an act of service to support the beautiful new earth that's emerging, and that we're co-creating together and we're co-midwifing together.
Yes. All right. Well, very good. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Pollyanna. It's always a pleasure.